At my brother's wedding banquet, the bride's family saw me and immediately said, "Why is this poor loser here? This isn't a place someone like you is allowed to come." I froze, unable to believe what I had just heard, until they repeated it a second time louder so everyone nearby could hear. I looked at my brother, silently begging for help. He looked back at me and said, "Why are you still here? Get out." My heart tightened. I turned around and left, taking with me the wedding gift as well, a supercar and a house. They panicked when they finally realized those gifts were mine. My name is Skylar Dixon, and I'm 38 years old. Living in Houston, Texas, I've spent most of my adult life making sure my younger brother had everything he needed to build a good future. I never imagined the day he got married would be the day he turned his back on me in front of everyone. That evening, as I walked out of the venue with the keys to a brand new Porsche and the deed to a luxury home still in my bag, something inside me shifted. The noise of the celebration faded behind me, and all I could hear was my own footsteps on the pavement. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just kept walking, holding those two gifts that were supposed to change their lives forever. Gifts I had planned in secret gifts no one knew about until it was too late. The phone calls started coming a few days later, frantic and full of questions they never thought they'd have to ask. But by then, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because this story is about family respect and what happens when the people closest to you finally see who you really are. That night, sitting alone in my small apartment in Houston, I stared at the walls that had been home for longer than I cared to admit. The place was tiny, just one bedroom with a kitchenette and a living area barely big enough for a used couch and a coffee table I'd picked up at a garage sale years ago. Rent was manageable on my office administrator salary, and that was all that mattered. I'd learned early on to stretch every dollar skipping dinners out or new clothes, so the bills always got paid on time. Looking back, the responsibility started when I was only 21. Our parents died suddenly in a car accident on I-10 during a rainstorm, one of those tragedies that changes everything in an instant. I came home from community college classes to find police at the door, and just like that, I became the only family my younger brother Cole Dixon had left. He was 13 then, still growing into his height, confused and quiet in a way that broke my heart every time I saw it. From that day forward, I put my own plans on hold. I dropped the idea of transferring to a 4-year university and took the first stable job I could find, working administrative roles that paid enough to keep a roof over our heads. Cole needed consistency more than anything, so I made sure he had it. I helped with homework late into the evenings after my shifts drove him to soccer practice even when I was exhausted, and sat through every parent-teacher conference alone, signing papers as his guardian. As he got older, the sacrifices grew bigger but felt natural. I turned down promotions that required relocation because Cole was settled in his high school here in Houston and thriving for the first time. When college applications came around, I worked extra hours to cover tutoring and application fees, then took out loans in my name to help with tuition when scholarships fell short. Watching him walk across that stage at graduation made every missed opportunity feel worthwhile. Cole was always appreciative in small ways, a hug after a tough day, or bringing home takeout when he started his first job. I never asked for more than that. Deep down, I believed that by giving him a solid foundation, he'd grow into someone who understood what family really meant. Someone who would stand by me the way I had always stood by him. Respect, basic respect, was all I ever expected in return. I didn't need gratitude parades or constant thanks. I just wanted to know that my efforts hadn't been invisible. Living frugally became second nature. While friends traveled or bought homes, I kept my expenses low, saving what little I could for emergencies or to help Cole when he needed a boost starting his career. Dates were rare and serious relationships even rarer. I didn't have the time or energy to build something new when my focus remained on making sure he was okay. At 38 now, with Cole around 30 and finally independent, I figured the hardest part was behind us. He'd found a good job, met someone special, and was building the life I'd hoped for him. I never resented any of it. Those years of putting him first gave me purpose during the grief, a reason to keep going when everything else felt empty. But sitting there that night, the quiet of the apartment pressed in heavier than usual. For the first time in a long while, doubts crept in about whether all that quiet sacrifice would ever be truly seen. 3 weeks before the wedding, I stopped at a convenience store near my office after a long day of sorting files and answering phones. The lottery jackpot for the Texas Powerball had climbed higher than usual, and the sign out front caught my eye while I was grabbing a bottle of water. On a whim, I handed over a few dollars for a quick pick ticket, not expecting anything more than a momentary distraction from the routine. That Saturday evening, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea watching the drawing on the local news like I sometimes did when insomnia kicked in. When the numbers started rolling out, I pulled the ticket from my purse and compared them casually at first. Then I froze, checking again more slowly, my heart picking up speed with each match. Every single number lined up perfectly, including the Powerball. I didn't shout or jump up. I just sat there for a long while, rereading the slip of paper under better light, half waiting for a mistake to appear. But there wasn't one. After taxes, the lump sum came to around $40 million, more money than I could picture spending in several lifetimes. The first instinct most people might have is to call family right away and share the news. But I didn't reach for the phone. Instead, I tucked the ticket into a safe place and spent the next few days thinking carefully about what this really meant. Cole was marrying Hadley Evans soon, and they were both excited about starting their life together in Houston. I knew they had been talking about saving for a house and dreaming of nicer things, but money was tight with their jobs and student loans lingering. Telling them now could shift everything between us in ways I wasn't ready for. I wanted the wedding to be about their commitment, not suddenly about what I could provide. So I decided to keep it completely secret, at least for a while. The idea formed gradually, use part of the winnings as a quiet thank you for all the years I'd invested in Cole's future, something that would set them up without fanfare or obligation. I contacted a financial advisor recommended by the lottery office, set up accounts discreetly, and started looking at properties online during lunch breaks. Before long, I found the perfect home in River Oaks, an elegant 4-bedroom with modern finishes, a big yard, and enough space for the family they hoped to start one day. I made a cash offer that closed quickly, no questions asked. Next came the car. Cole had always admired sleek sports cars, mentioning Porsche models whenever we passed one on the highway. I arranged for a brand new 911 in a color I knew he'd love, having it detailed and ready for delivery. Both the house deed and the car title would be transferred to Cole and Hadley as their wedding gift, wrapped up simply so the surprise hit all at once. For the first time, I allowed myself to think about my own needs too. I'd spent so long prioritizing everyone else that choosing something just for me felt almost foreign. I toured a few high-rise buildings downtown and settled on a spacious condo with views over the city skyline, modern appliances and amenities I'd never splurged on before. Closing on that felt like a small personal victory, a place where I could finally relax without worrying about the next bill. In the quiet moments leading up to the wedding, I pictured how it would go. They'd open the envelopes or see the keys, realization dawning slowly, then the hugs and genuine thanks that would make years of going without feel truly rewarded. Hadley might tear up. Cole would look stunned in the best way, and for once, I'd be the one giving something big instead of always holding back. The thought brought a rare smile as I went about my days, keeping everything under wraps while helping with small wedding details they asked for. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and warm, typical for Houston this time of year. I'd chosen my outfit carefully weeks earlier, a simple navy dress that was the nicest thing I owned, paired with low heels and a small silver necklace I rarely wore. Nothing flashy but presentable enough for the occasion. Cole had asked me to be there early for family photos, so I took a taxi to the venue, a sprawling country club on the outskirts of the city, with manicured lawns, white tents, and floral arches everywhere. The place looked straight out of a magazine. Tables draped in linen crystal glasses catching the sunlight, and waitstaff circulating with trays of champagne. Guests milled about in designer suits and dresses that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I spotted Cole near the entrance, looking sharp in his tuxedo, laughing with a group of friends. Hadley stood beside him, radiant in a flowing gown with delicate lace details, her hair styled perfectly. Hadley's parents, Martin and Susan Evans, were hosting much of the event, and they moved through the crowd, greeting people with easy confidence. Martin wore a tailored suit, Susan an elegant silk dress and pearls. They both had that polished look of people used to these kinds of gatherings. I'd met them a few times before at engagement parties, and conversations had always stayed polite on the surface. As the reception got underway after the ceremony, I found my assigned seat toward the back, near some distant relatives I barely knew. The band played softly, couples danced, and toasts were made celebrating the new couple. I watched it all with a quiet sense of pride for Cole, thinking how far he'd come. The gift envelopes with the house deed and car keys sat discreetly in my purse, waiting for the right moment later when presents would be opened. Then Martin and Susan approached my table, drinks in hand, their smiles tight rather than warm. Martin glanced around first as if checking who might overhear before leaning in slightly. "Why is this poor loser here?" he said clearly, his voice carrying just enough. "This isn't a place someone like you is allowed to come." Susan nodded beside him, adding louder for emphasis. "Exactly. Some people should know their place." Conversation at nearby tables quieted. A few heads turned, but no one spoke up. The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate, cutting deeper because they were said so casually in front of everyone. I felt heat rise in my face, not from anger yet, but from the sudden exposure, like being stripped bare in a room full of strangers. I looked across the space toward Cole, hoping he'd heard and would step in. He was close enough, talking to Hadley, and our eyes met for a moment. I waited, holding my breath, expecting him to walk over to say something, anything in my defense. The seconds stretched, the music continuing in the background while guests pretended not to notice. Cole excused himself from his group and came toward me, but his expression wasn't protective. He stopped a few feet away, voice low but firm. "Why are you still here? Get out." No explanation, no question about what happened, just those words delivered like an order. Around us, the celebration carried on, laughter from another table, clinking glasses as if nothing unusual had taken place. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress without rushing. The purse with the gifts felt heavier as I picked it up. Without raising my voice or causing a scene, I walked past the tables, past Martin and Susan, who watched with satisfied looks, past Cole, who turned back to his guests. No one stopped me. I made it to the exit, stepped into the warm evening air, and signaled for a taxi. Sitting in the back seat on the ride home, the city lights blurring outside the window, the weight of what just happened settled fully. Years of building a future for him, and in one moment, it all unraveled. The trust I'd held onto, the belief that family meant something unbreakable, it collapsed right there, leaving an emptiness I hadn't felt since losing our parents. A few days after the wedding, my phone started ringing more than it had in months. The first call came from Cole while I was unpacking boxes in the old apartment, preparing for a quiet move. His voice sounded concerned on the surface, asking if I was okay and whether everything was all right after leaving early. He mentioned the day had been hectic with guests and speeches, making it hard to keep track of everyone. There was no direct mention of what his in-laws had said. No apology for his own words, just a general worry that I might have felt unwell. I kept my responses short and neutral, saying I was fine and needed some rest. Hadley called the next afternoon, her tone warm and chatty, at first talking about how beautiful the flowers had been and how exhausted they both felt from the excitement. She asked if I'd made it home safely that night and hoped I wasn't upset about anything. Again, nothing specific about the incident, only vague reassurance that weddings could be overwhelming for everyone involved. As the days passed, I arranged for movers to handle the few belongings I wanted to take to the new condo downtown. The building had a concierge and secure entry, offering a sense of privacy I hadn't prioritized before. I transferred utilities, updated my address quietly, and settled into the larger space with its open layout and balcony overlooking the skyline. Unpacking there felt like starting a chapter no one else knew about yet. The calls continued over the following week, shifting gradually in tone. Cole rang one evening to check in again, mentioning casually that they were thinking about future plans like buying a home someday. He asked how work was going for me and whether finances were stable with rent increases around the city. Hadley followed up soon after, wondering aloud if I'd ever considered downsizing or moving to something more modern, hinting that older apartments could get expensive to maintain. Their questions began weaving in more personal details about money, whether I had savings set aside for unexpected costs, or if I'd looked into better investment options lately. The concerns still wrapped around each conversation, but the focus sharpened on my situation, probing gently about changes I might be considering. I answered vaguely each time, giving nothing away, while listening closely to the pattern emerging. By the end of that second week, the shift inside me became clear. The initial hurt from the wedding lingered, but it hardened into something calmer and more detached. I no longer waited for an honest explanation or regret from them. Instead, I observed the way their interest surfaced only after suspecting something different about my circumstances. The warmth in their voices rang hollow now, tied more to curiosity than care. I stopped picking up every call, letting some go to voicemail where messages repeated the same caring phrases mixed with subtle inquiries. Responding when I felt like it, I kept things surface level, revealing nothing about the new place or any plans. The quiet of the condo in the evenings allowed space to process it all without rush, turning raw pain into steady awareness. 2 weeks later, a bank statement arrived in my mailbox at the old apartment address I hadn't fully updated yet. Among the usual charges, one stood out: a payment to a private investigation firm I didn't recognize. The amount wasn't huge, but the description made it clear someone had hired them recently. It didn't take long to connect the dots. Cole and Hadley must have grown suspicious after my vague answers and started digging for information on their own. I wasn't shocked exactly. The pattern of questions had already pointed in that direction, but seeing it confirmed in black and white brought a new layer of clarity. They weren't just curious. They were actively searching for changes in my life that might explain something they couldn't quite figure out. The condo purchase had gone through public records, and apparently that was enough to catch their attention. Around the same time, my best friend Tegan Fox texted to see if I wanted to grab coffee. We'd known each other since community college days, back when life felt simpler and plans still seemed possible. She worked as a graphic designer now, always busy but never too busy for a catch-up. I suggested we meet at a quiet cafe near my new building instead of the usual spots. When we sat down with our drinks, Tegan noticed right away that something was off. She asked directly what had been going on, no small talk to ease into it. I hesitated at first, then decided to share part of what happened, enough to explain why I'd been distant without revealing the full scope of the money involved. I told her about the wedding reception, the harsh words from Hadley's parents, and how Cole had reacted. Tegan listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to quiet anger on my behalf. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You didn't deserve any of that," she said firmly. "Not after everything you've done for him. Blood doesn't give anyone a free pass to treat you like garbage." Hearing it said so plainly lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. For days after the wedding, a small part of me had wondered if I'd overreacted or brought it on myself somehow. Tegan's straightforward support cut through that doubt completely. She reminded me that standing up for basic respect wasn't selfish. It was necessary. We talked longer than planned, moving from the cafe to a walk along a nearby path as the afternoon faded. Tegan shared stories from her own family struggles, pointing out how boundaries had saved her sanity over the years. Her perspective, calm and unwavering, helped solidify what I'd already started feeling, that I wasn't the one who needed to bend here. By the time we parted ways, the lingering self-blame had faded almost entirely. Having someone in my corner who saw the situation clearly without any hidden agenda made all the difference. Tegan promised to check in more often, and for the first time in weeks, I looked forward to the days ahead, instead of just getting through them. A month after the wedding, the calls from Cole became more frequent and insistent. He left voicemails suggesting we meet up to clear the air, saying it was important for family to stay close. Hadley joined in with texts proposing a casual dinner at a restaurant downtown so we could talk things through without pressure. Their messages carried an urgency that hadn't been there before, layered with hints about wanting to understand my recent changes better. I agreed to meet them one evening at a neutral spot, a quiet Italian place with dim lighting and booths for privacy. When I arrived, Cole and Hadley were already seated, looking expectant as they waved me over. Cole stood briefly to hug me, Hadley smiled widely, and they both launched into small talk about their honeymoon trip and new married routines. As the server took our orders, the conversation shifted smoothly to me. Cole asked how the new place was treating me, mentioning he'd heard through mutual contacts that I'd moved. Hadley leaned in, expressing curiosity about the building and whether it felt like a big upgrade. Their questions came wrapped in compliments, but the focus stayed on details like costs and how I'd managed the transition so quickly. I let them talk, sipping water while they circled closer to direct inquiries about finances and any windfalls I might have kept quiet. Cole brought up old times, reminding me how I'd always been there for him, suggesting that now things could balance out if circumstances had improved. Hadley added comments about shared family resources and how exciting it would be to plan bigger things together. The manipulation grew clearer with each exchange, their voices alternating between concern and excitement at the possibilities. When they finally paused, waiting for me to open up, I spoke evenly. The wedding gift I had prepared for you both was the deed to a house in River Oaks and the keys to a Porsche 911. I bought them in cash, planning to hand everything over that day as a surprise. Silence fell over the table. Cole's face drained of color, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Hadley's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth as the words sank in. They exchanged glances, disbelief turning to realization slowly. Cole stammered first, asking if I was serious, his voice cracking slightly. Hadley reached for his arm, whispering something I couldn't catch, tears starting to form. They both began talking at once, apologies tumbling out about misunderstandings and stress from the day, promises that things could be different now. I waited until they quieted, then continued calmly. It wasn't about the money or the gifts. It was about respect, the basic kind that family should show without conditions. What happened at the reception and everything since made it clear where I stand. Cole tried again, voice pleading, saying they never meant to hurt me and could make it right. Hadley nodded vigorously, suggesting we start fresh with better communication, but the regret in their eyes felt tied more to what they'd lost than to the pain they'd caused. I stood to leave, placing money for my drink on the table. I'm done trying to earn something that should have been there all along. From now on, there's no more contact. Not because of what I have, but because of what was missing when I had nothing. They sat stunned as I walked out, no further words needed. The cool evening air outside felt freeing, the decision final, and without doubt. Several months later, life in the condo had settled into a rhythm I never knew I needed. Mornings started with coffee on the balcony, watching the Houston skyline come alive as traffic flowed below. I took up hobbies I'd postponed for years, joining a local book club, trying yoga classes at the building's gym, and even planning short weekend trips to nearby spots along the Gulf Coast. Work remained steady, but with financial worries gone, it felt lighter, more like a choice than a necessity. Friends like Tegan came over often for dinners or movie nights, filling the space with laughter that had been missing before. The freedom to make decisions solely for myself brought a quiet contentment, one built on boundaries I finally enforced. I stayed in touch with a few old colleagues and distant cousins, but the door to closer family ties remained firmly closed. Word about Cole and Hadley filtered through mutual acquaintances over time. Their credit card balances had climbed steadily as they tried to maintain the lifestyle they'd shown off early in marriage. Without the big financial boost they'd counted on, monthly payments became a struggle, leading to late fees and mounting interest. Arguments over spending grew frequent, straining what had started as an excited new chapter. Friends mentioned seeing them at events looking tense, conversations turning awkward when money topics arose. The dream home they'd talked about stayed out of reach, replaced by talks of downsizing or second jobs. The pressure wore on their relationship, turning small disagreements into bigger rifts that no honeymoon glow could fix. I didn't follow their updates closely or feel satisfaction in hearing it. Their choices led to those outcomes naturally without any action from me. It simply confirmed what I'd learned the hard way: respect can't be bought back once it's been traded away. Looking back on everything, the clearest lesson stands out: treat the people who sacrifice quietly with the dignity they deserve, because one day they might decide they've given enough. Family isn't an endless resource to draw from. It's built on mutual care that has to go both ways. Don't overlook or undervalue those who put you first, assuming they'll always be there no matter how you act. I've found peace in living for myself now, without regret or bitterness. There's no going back, no reconciliation waiting around the corner, and that's okay. Some bridges once burned stay that way for good reason. Thank you for sticking with me through this whole story. It means a lot that you listened all the way to the end. If anything here resonated with you, drop a like, share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and let me know what you took away from it. Your experiences matter too.